Hello, welcome to another video. Today, I bring you a very important matter. The matter of books. Because this is a booktube channel. But specifically, this video is about books that I think everyone should try to read at least once, okay? Some of these books are standalones, some of them are first books in series. Either way, they are great books that have had some form of impact on me. Basically, I picked a bunch of books that I have read, because I kind of need to read them in order to make this kind of video, that I felt really stuck with me in some way, shape, or form, and I feel like everybody should read them at least once. I'm not going to force you to read any of these, but just consider this video my slight little, push to get you to read some of these, if you so fancy. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first book that I am going to talk about is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. This is the first book in the Percy Jackson series. This is just, it's very near and dear to my heart, okay? I feel like everybody should read these because they're just really good. So if you don't know, this book, we're just going to talk this book specifically. We're not going to get into the other ones because I'm not going to force you to make a commitment to a series. This book follows Percy Jackson, who has found out that he is not just a normal kid, he is the son of the Greek god Poseidon. After finding this out, he goes to Camp Half-Blood, which is a camp for all of the demigods. While he's there, chillaxing, learning the ropes, he finds out that somebody has stolen Zeus's Master Bolt, and they're all kind of pointing fingers at him, which, rude, but whatever. So he goes on this quest to retrieve the Master Bolt and, prove his innocence and restore balance and all that stuff. It's really good. I promise. It's just been a hot minute since I've read it. So, next up, the book that I'm going to suggest is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This is a coming-of-age story that follows Ponyboy, who is the younger brother to, what are their names again? Dairy and Soda Pop. Now, Ponyboy and his brothers are a part of this social group that have been not so affectionately termed the Greasers. They're kind of looked down upon, I can't speak tonight, by the Socks, which are basically guys who are, higher up in the social and the societal totem pole or whatever. One night something crazy happens and Ponyboy's life is, thrown all out of whack. I really enjoyed this story. I actually had no idea what it was about when I went into it. I just knew that they referenced it in Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, and I was like, I must know what they're talking about. So I got this, I read it, and it was really good. I really loved it. It's just such a great story, and I highly recommend it. If you can, please read it. It's short. It's not that long, actually. It's only 180 pages, so it's not that long. Read it, please. Okay, we're gonna do these two memoirs that I have, okay? So the next book that I'm going to talk about is The Reason: How I Discovered a Life Worth Living by Lacey Sturm. This book is basically Lacey Sturm recounting her life and all of the events that led to her finding Jesus and all the events after that really just helped her to grow as a Christian and show her love for Jesus. And it was really good, guys. I went into this expecting to love it, and I loved it. It has these illustrations. Let me find one. So there are illustrations all throughout this book, and I love it, guys. I really love it. The next book that I'm going to talk about is one that I read kind of recently, actually. And that is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory by Caitlin Doty. If you don't know, Caitlin Doty is a licensed mortician. So this book kind of just shows how she got into the death industry and what some of like the stories of what happened throughout her career. I found this very eye-opening. Not only do we get to read about these situations that she has faced throughout her career in the death industry, but she also weaves in the death rituals of civilizations throughout history. And I felt like it made for a very interesting book. I was impressed with how she was able to weave in the historic death rituals of civilizations while still keeping it all cohesive somehow. I just really enjoyed it. This book really turned my view of death like upside down, so I highly recommend it. I feel like it should be mandatory reading for every living human on Earth, okay? Okay. The next book I'm going to talk about is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. There was a point where I was very intrigued by the historical fiction genre, and I really wanted to just like kind of dip my toes in there a little bit. At that time, I was watching a lot of BookTube, and a book that I was seeing mentioned a lot was this one, and I was like, you know what? Let's give it a try. In All the Light We Cannot See, we have Marie Lore, who is a blind girl who loves reading, is obsessed with it. We also have Werner, who is half German, half Jewish, and he is very good at fixing things. And so we follow them throughout their lives, these paths that they both take. Eventually, their stories converge into this beautiful, beautiful book. One, this cover is just beautiful. Second of all, this book is told through vignettes, so we get to see little snippets of Marie Lore and Werner's lives all the way up until they meet, and then a little while after. I just think it is a beautiful book. I actually probably need to reread this because it's been a while since I've read it, but I remember just being so surprised by it, and I loved it, and yeah, I definitely, I highly recommend it. The next book I'm going to suggest is Voices, The Final Hours of Joan of Arc by David Elliott. Now, this is a collection of poetry that basically sheds some light on, you know, the final hours of Joan of Arc. It's told from like not just Joan's perspective, but also the perspective of the things around her. So like sword and I think her armor or something along those lines. It was really good. I really enjoyed it, and I feel like if you read this, you will instantly want to know more about Joan of Arc. So that's always good. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Selected Poems of Emily Dickinson. You don't have to read this specific book. I just want you to read poems by Emily Dickinson, okay? Because I feel like she is underrated and she should be appreciated more. First of all, she's one of my favorite poets. Just gonna put that out there. His poems are actually, I feel they're very easy to understand considering they are, you know, among the classics, and I feel like classic poetry can be very difficult to understand. A lot of her poems are very easy, very comprehensible. I just highly recommend reading some of her poems. Just, you know, putting it out there. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Maze Runner by James Dashner. Now, I know it seems like a lot of people on BookTube hate this book, and that confuses me because it's actually pretty good. This book follows Thomas, who wakes up in the center of this maze with all of these boys just staring down at him, and he's confused. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't remember who he was before this happened. and now he must adapt to a new lifestyle. And soon he learns that they are in the center of a maze and they have to break out. And so this series, I feel like, is very underrated or undeservingly hated, and I don't understand it because it's really good. Just read it. Give it a try. Please don't listen to all of the people on BookTube that say it's horrible or that it sucks, because it doesn't. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. Now this is a kind of dystopian, kind of sci-fi thing. I'm not entirely sure on the genre, okay? I'm grouping it in with like the YA stuff though. This book follows Todd Hewitt, who is among the settlers of New Earth. The old Earth has basically become so like polluted and disgusting that nobody can really live there anymore, so they're populating new worlds, and this is the first one that they're populating, New Earth. Now, Todd lives in a town called Prentice Town, where the population is only male, because all of the women were basically killed off by this disease that allowed the men to hear each other's thoughts. Or so they think. Todd one day goes out into the swamp outside of town and finds this ever-growing silence, which, weird, right? So he finds out it's a girl. Girls do still exist. Shocking. The girl's name is Viola. She's been through some traumatic stuff. She's refusing to talk, understandable. Together, Todd and Viola, find out that things are not as Todd always thought. And it's a great story of rebellion and right and wrong, and it's just really good, and I can't adequately put into words how great of a book this is. So please, somehow this wargled, that's not a word, mess that I have spewed forth at you about this book has intrigued you and made you want to pick it up, please do, because it's really good, I promise you. The next book I'm going to talk about is Divergent by Veronica Roth. This is the first book in the series. This book follows Beatrice Pryor, who is a 16-year-old living in a dystopian Chicago where society has been split up into 5 factions. We have the Abnegation, the Amity, the Candor, the Erudite, and the Dauntless. I did that out of alphabetical order. I was doing so well too. Basically, once you reach 16, you take an aptitude test, and that determines which faction you are best suited for. Triss, she's 16, she takes the aptitude test, and she ends up, suiting 3 factions. If you suit more than one faction, you are categorized as divergent, and you must keep that hidden, otherwise, it could be fatal, because for some reason people don't like divergence. And I really love this book from like age 14 all the way through 16, 17. I loved this book series for a while, so I'm in the process of going back and rereading it and seeing if I still love it. So if you would like to join me in that reread, you can. It's not too late. I'm still on the first book because summer reading derailed that plan. But I'm not mad at it. The next book that I'm going to talk about is kind of in the same vein as Divergent, and that is Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Look at that shiny reflective cover. This book follows Katniss Everdeen, who is, I don't know why I'm looking at the back, it just says may the odds be ever in your favor. There's nothing that can help me there. This book follows Katniss Everdeen, who is a 16-year-old girl living in a dystopian, I think I saw a map of it once and it was across North America, but I'm not entirely sure. Either way, it's split up into districts. There are 12 districts, okay? So each year there is a reaping, and this reaping basically picks one boy and one girl from each district to go into the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is a competition to the death. basically boys and girls must kill each other in order to survive in this game. And the winner, you know, gets to live. So, unfortunately, on this day, Prim's name gets called. Prim is Katniss's younger sister, so Katniss is like, can't let that happen. I volunteer as tribute, and then, you know, the rest is history. Or I guess not for you if you haven't read this. You should read it. The next book I'm going to talk about is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. I've talked about this book quite a bit, I think. This book follows Tessa Gray, who has moved to London, pretty much. She's to be with her brother. She's checking in on him, seeing how life is going, and then she ends up getting kidnapped. And, you know, she's thrust into the world of shadow hunters and, you know, vampires and warlocks and demons and crazy stuff. You know, actually, maybe you don't know. I'm not entirely sure. Let's be real here. I really liked this book. I thought it was very well written. I really like Cassandra Clare's writing. Jem is a cinnamon roll. Will must be protected at all costs, okay? I just really loved it, and I feel like you should read it because it's really good. The next book I will talk about is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This is 100% worth all of the hype that you see. This book is so, like, cute and adorable, and I feel like it's one of the few, like, wholesome contemporaries that you can find nowadays. This book follows Lara Jean, who is the middle daughter in her family. Her sister Margot is going off to college in another continent, and so now she must step up into the role of big sister for her younger sister Kitty. While Lara Jean is trying to get used to this new normal, these love letters that she has written kind of get out. Every time Lara Jean has a crush that is just so strong, she writes a letter to that boy in order to kind of vanquish all of these feelings. And so once she finishes writing a letter, she seals it in an envelope, addresses it, and then puts it in a hat box, never to be seen again. Until they get sent out one day, and now Lara Jean must face those consequences. It's a very, you know, horrifying premise. Nobody wants that to happen to them. But it makes for a great story to read about. This is very entertaining. I really love it, and I think if you are able to, get a copy and read it because it's great, it's adorable, it's wholesome, it's funny. I love it, okay? The camera died, but I'm back now. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. Now, this book follows Natasha, who is a Jamaican immigrant to America. She has lived the majority of her life here with her family, but unfortunately their visas are up and they have to leave. So this takes place on Natasha's last day in America. While she's trying to figure out a way for her to stay in America. We're also following Daniel, who is, you know, on the path to be a doctor, I believe. Yes, be a doctor. He has a very important meeting with the college that his parents are hoping that he will attend, and eventually his and Natasha's paths cross, and they end up spending the day together and falling in love. I've seen a lot of people not really care for this because it's too insta-lovey, but that's what this entire book is kind of about. Daniel is trying to get Natasha to fall in love with him within a day. If that does not scream insta-love to you, I don't know what does. So, you know, that aside, I really enjoyed this book. There were a few aspects that I don't necessarily agree with, but that's just, you know, personal preference. but I thought it was a really good book, and I feel like, you know, everybody could give it a shot. The next book I'm going to talk about is If I Stay by Gail Forman. Now, this book follows Mia, who is a kind of teenage musical prodigy, I guess. She can play the cello and she can play like a few other instruments. However, one day while her and her family are, you know, taking a drive, they end up getting into this horrible crash, and Mia is the only one to survive. And now she must choose between staying in, you know, this realm or moving on to the next. I thought it was good. It had some very, you know, poignant things to say, and it said it very well. I really liked it, and, you know, it's on this list. So, the next book is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Whoa, 2 Patrick Ness books on the same list. I know, surprising. This book follows Connor, who is a 12-year-old boy. His mother is battling cancer, and so he has to pick up the slack around the house and make sure that she's taken care of. Now, while he's dealing with this like really big change in his life, he's also dealing with the fact that the kids at his school just aren't treating him the same because his mom has cancer. And so this brings a lot of like anger and resentment, and one night the monster comes calling and makes a deal with Connor. The monster will tell Connor 3 stories, and in return, Connor will tell him a 4th. The monster's purpose for Connor is to make him realize some truths that he has kept locked inside, and to accept feelings that he's held on to or kept hidden, and it was really good. I loved it. You should think about reading it, because, you know, yeah. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. Now, this book follows Charlie. It is told through letters that he is writing to this anonymous person. We don't know who it is, but basically it's Charlie recounting things that are happening in his life, and it's basically just him kind of growing up, really. I really liked the format of this, and I always think it's cool when a book is told in like an unusual kind of format. So the fact that Charlie is writing these letters to this unknown person really intrigued me. I really loved it. Some of the choices Charlie made, I was shaking my head, but like, you live and you learn, I guess. That's what this book kind of showcases. You live and you learn. These final 2 are some of my absolute favorites, okay? So, this one is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I absolutely love this freaking book. It's got a coffee cup on there too. I love it. I love it so much. This book follows Kath. She is starting her freshman year of college with her twin sister Ren. The thing is, she thought that her and her twin sister would be roommates, and her sister had other ideas. So now Kath has to kind of adjust to this new college life. She's doing that. She also has to balance her popular and ever-growing fanfiction, Carry On Simon, which is a fanfic she writes for the Harry Potter-esque series Simon Snow. She also has to check in on her dad and make sure that he's okay. I love this book so much. I think I've actually read this book like 2 or 3 times, if I'm being honest here. Kath is such a relatable character, and I feel like this is such an easy and fun read. The first time I read it like that. Yeah, if you want a fluffy contemporary that also has like some angst sprinkled in there perfectly, this is the way to go. And then the final book on this list is 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott, Mickey Daughtry, and Tobias Iaconis. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his last name. This book, oh my goodness. This book follows Stella and Will, who are 2 teenagers with cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disease that causes an overproduction of mucus within your organs, basically. So, in the beginning of this book, we see that Stella has been admitted back into the hospital for another round of antibiotics, and there she meets Will. Will is the dark, mysterious new guy that she's never seen before in the hospital. They end up, you know, falling in love, but it kind of can't really be because, you know, they both have cystic fibrosis, and cystic fibrosis patients cannot get within 6 feet of each other. Otherwise, they could risk catching each other's bacteria and could make each other worse. So Stella decides, you know what, not good enough. So she takes 1 foot back and, you know, this book makes me feel a lot of things. I absolutely sobbed when I read this book. There is an epilogue at the end here. I had to take a break between the final chapter and the epilogue, okay? I will just say that. It's just so good. Please read it, please. Alrighty, that is all of it. Those are all of the books that I think everyone should read at least once in their lifetime. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that like button. If you would like to, you can also subscribe down there and hit that little notification bell, and that will notify you of when I upload new videos. I try to upload once a week, but you never know. Sometimes life gets in the way. If you've read any of these books, let me know down in the comments because I would really love to know what your thoughts were on them. If you haven't read these books but want to, also let me know down in the comments so I can hype it up for you even more so you'll read it, okay? Okay. That is everything I want to say. I'll see you next week. Bye!